So I'm pretty sure a lot of you had at least been in touch a few times in their professional career with something that we call surveys. Yeah, at least you probably get it like once or twice a year when your company asks you, "Hey, how good did we perform this year? Did we were very good, incredible, or just out of any other good?" Yeah, so you always get these kind of surveys. And today we want to talk about something that I call Masterclass, yeah, surveys with Microsoft 365 become, because it's a very interesting topic. I think surveys are a very nice element actually in the workplace, and I want to show you a little bit how I'm doing it, what I have experienced, and what different kind of tools we have in the surveys. So maybe I take you a little bit through a little tour of how where we can actually use those surveys. So one important thing that it's not always just a feedback formula. Yeah. One actually very important thing is to open those surveys, to have them open every day, every night, every hour, to be able to receive feedback, to be able to receive feedback at every time. Yeah. Also, of course, to get feedback anonymously. Often what I see when we do surveys, when we do meetings, when we ask people about their opinion, sometimes they're holding themselves back because they're not sure, they're not the ones who like to speak up. And with surveys and with this type of anonymous feedback center, we have always the chance to also give the small and silent voices a chance to be heard. So that's actually a very common scenario, and I really like that because surveys, you can't be very loud at surveys. You know, when you're in a room together with people and you ask, "Hey, who has an idea?" When we are in a brainstorming scenario, and you ask, "Hey, who do you think has a good idea about that?" And then there is always the guys, yeah, getting up their hand and saying something. And with a survey or with some kind of those feedback, everyone is the same and every voice is heard. Of course, we can also ask about certain things. So we can do like small quizzes. That's also a nice feature that we get with Microsoft Forms, and with other tools, to be honest. Yeah. And of course, we have another classic use case, that's event registration. Everything that has to be done with, yeah, registering something, with entering information. And actually, there are a lot of more possibilities that we will discover in the next 40 minutes. So first of all, who are you speaking with? Who do you are listening to? My name is Daniel Roecker. I'm from Germany. I'm a German MVP for Microsoft 365 Copilot. I'm working in this area for like 5 or 6 years at a great company called Glück and Kanya. We're basically a managed service provider that's doing everything that is related to Microsoft. We're Microsoft only, so yeah, quite. I love Microsoft and I love everything that we do and that Microsoft does. By the way, speaking about Copilot, yeah, we won't come out today. We will see a little Copilot action here. And by the way, if you see any mistakes on the slides, that's actually translated with the latest feature of Copilot in PowerPoint. So yesterday the presentation was in German, and today it's in English with just one click. I actually did this great demonstration for Copilot, but I hope everything was translated correctly. I checked today a little bit, but there might be something that I missed, so make sure to have a look. If you want to go to my LinkedIn, or if you want to visit me, there is a large QR code right behind me. You can just scan it. Make sure to connect. I'm sharing important tips every day about Copilot, about forms, about modern work, about everything, what I'm passionate about. So yeah, make sure to connect there. So let's get right into, for if there is anyone that speaks German, you can also check out my podcast, but that's currently German only. I'm working on an AI version of me that is doing that in multiple languages, but currently, if you are speaking German or want to learn maybe German, check my podcast. Okay, so now let's get back to the topic. What different things we will see today? First of all, there are currently 3 tools that I want to tackle. Yeah. So the first of that is Microsoft Forms. I want to show you a little bit Forms because it's like the mothership. It's like the tool everything has originated from. and I want to show you what it's capable of. But then there's two other guys on the field. One is Forms, actually it's Microsoft Lists, and the other one is Microsoft Pulse. So a Microsoft List has a integration with Forms, and exactly that I will show you today. And at the end, you will get a large matrix from me where you can see which use case fits the best with the tool. So let's start from the beginning. We have Microsoft Forms. Microsoft Forms, I'm sure you have seen that, you at least maybe know about roughly what it's doing. Microsoft Forms is like the basic ever since survey application from Microsoft. Everything we do in Forms is within the web. So we create surveys in the web, and we have the two choices basically to create anything like a form or survey style, or to have like a quiz. We have the possibility to create a lot of different things because Forms is really powerful. It has the largest subset of features in terms of how surveys can be built. And it's free and included in basically all of the licenses. Yeah, so in every E1 license, Business Premium, even in the apps for enterprise, it's included. Another small brother of Microsoft Forms, it's called Pulse. Yeah, so I think it is like 1.5 years ago. Actually, that's why I initially created this masterclass. Is when Microsoft Forms integration was in Teams, it was also named Forms. And the people were confused. Why are there different apps that do different things? So Microsoft decided to make it a little bit clearer and give the app a new name. So they called it Microsoft Pulse. Pulse, just that you know, is still based on the Forms technology, but it's a small Teams app that is pretty well integrated. Yeah. So it has special purposes, for example, in Teams meetings and Teams channels. I will show you both of that. It's available via the Teams app, so you can distribute it and configure it there. And the great thing about it, it's actually internally and working externally. So there is definitely no limitation in terms of use. And the last guy on the field is Microsoft Lists with integrated Forms. That's actually the newest edition of my masterclass because it's still available like maybe 1.5 years now. And basically it is originating on the SharePoint lists. And Microsoft Lists gets this additional thing when you can create forms with it. Yeah. So since last year, it has offered this integration, and you can create fully automatic forms with those integration. And I will show you what exactly the use cases for this. But keep in mind, currently, when we are working with SharePoint, everything that our company does in terms of data access management and data access governance applies to that. So SharePoint Lists is limited because it is a mostly internal application. So make sure that you just have in mind that it might be probably limited to more or less or a little bit more internal use cases. Okay, that's for an overview. I will explain a little bit more about every tool right now. And of course, we start with the mothership with Microsoft Forms. I already talked you a little bit through different use cases that I see with Forms, and just to make it even a little bit more. What I've seen customers do with Microsoft Forms, actually, of course, there are event registrations. So you can use it to get their people's names, to get their information, just imagine you're planning like an event, you get the name, you get the department, you get their preferences on food, you get on what date they want to arrive, you get every information that you or every participant that helps organizing an event needs. Then we have, of course, internal scenarios where we get like feedback, everything related, company feedback, yes, but also project feedback, retrospective events, yeah, where we say, hey, our first part of the project has finished, make sure to drop us some feedback. As I said, you can configure forms anonymously. So you really can receive good feedback if you give the chance to make it anonymous. Also, an integration that has been added into Microsoft Forms is one. There is an app for PowerPoint. Maybe you know that from something that's called Menti or Mentimeter, where you can see live results. It was pretty common while the COVID pandemic, actually. I saw that a lot in meetings and in webinars. So that is something that you can also use with forms in PowerPoint, or with just the default Forms web app, where you can see moving those numbers up and down, getting those feedbacks in. You see it actually in the video on the right side. There is in Forms a button, it calls Present. And when you click on Present, it opens a full screen view on your browser, and you have the possibility to get the live results streamed via screen sharing or via the integration in PowerPoint. Of course, employee surveys, we already talked about that. Brainstorming scenarios, where we say, hey, if you at any time have an idea for a good product, make sure to submit us that idea. And you can choose if you want to make it anonymous or with a name, or for example, if you want people to log in for that. So you can make sure that everything gets heard at any time. So Forms is always open. There are no open or closing hours, so that's quite a nice feature on that. As I said, we can also do things like quizzes. Why? So we can have in Forms, when we create a quiz, the basic difference is that if we have a multiple choice field, we can select the right answer. We can also give the answer an explanation why it's right or why it's wrong, depending on how we formulate the question. And we can also, for example, add time limits. So, and when with time limits and those features, we also can talk about a little bit about gamification. So we can do small quizzing games, for example. And I would say like the top use case or the most complex use case that we actually can do with Microsoft Forms is everything related to digital processes. So Forms has an ID in the Microsoft 365 universe that I will show you later. And we can use this ID actually in Power Automate to start our processes, to do something with the feedback or to do something with the input that we get from that Forms. So also, if you ever need like a small interface to start a process, Microsoft Forms could be actually a good starting point for that. Let's go on. You maybe are now interested, okay, that was like a little bit basic stuff. That shows some interesting things. So first of all, Forms has settings. And the settings are quite cool. We can really do a lot in the settings, and sometimes people don't know about that. So first of all, a Forms can have three different access status. The first one is that it's open to the public, so anyone without a login can respond. If you click that, the Forms is always anonymous in terms of registration, but of course you can still ask the name. So the point that a Forms is anonymous, that could be right, but you can of course ask people to enter the name. They don't need to give in the right name. You can make this field required, but if you really want to save the people the time and do not enter the name, you can only do that internally. So when you say only people in my organization can respond, then this link is not available to the outside. So you need to have an active login with Entra ID and access the page. And if you click the option record name, then the name will be recorded automatically with email address and with the name and with a timestamp. So they don't need to fill those information about give me your email, give me your last name and your first name. It will just be automatically recorded by Forms given by the single sign-on. And you can even restrict the access further down by saying, hey, I want to select specific people or groups from my organization to be able to respond. For example, if you're gathering feedback from your sales team, you can give the names of the team or the group and only give those people access, so you make sure that no one else can answer the form, even if he has the link to the form. Okay? Another button that you might have seen is accept responses. What is this for? So basically, if you do not accept responses, then you basically have closed the Forms. But the good thing is you can reopen it. It's basically the same. When you enter an end date or a start date, it basically triggers the accept responses, but you can also ignore that and override it with the accept responses. So when you have an started and an end date. You make sure that if you say, hey, event registration is until next Friday, end of business day, then you can say Friday, end of business day, end date, and then they will no longer be able to fill out the forms. Okay, but you can also then unclick the end date and accept responses again if you want to reuse the forms. Or what I really like to do is to have one forms to receive feedback for example, like a Copilot project. And I have one forms with a subset of questions, and I open it at the beginning of the project, in the middle of the project, and at the end of the project. So I have 3 clear data points. And I make sure that I always use the same form. So I have the aggregated information. I have everything in one data set. I don't need to combine 3 form outputs. And I make sure that I have everything in one place by just giving it different timestamps, by opening and closing the forms different times. So that's actually possible. Set time duration, I think it's clear. When you open the forms, it has a countdown that people see. And you can also modify the message when, for example, you do not accept responses by saying, sorry, your latest form is closed. Also, depending on the question types or depending how this form is configured, you can shuffle those questions. If you have a lot of multiple choice questions, they have no dependency on each other, then you can actually shuffle them. Yeah, you can also disable numbering if you want, like, just as I said, shuffling, or you can show a progress bar to the users if you have like a straight through form that can be measured in terms of numbers of questions. If you have the like stacked forms or branched forms, that this option then is not possible. You can select if people want to get different possibilities to answers, so to give multiple answers. You can customize the thank you message, and you can allow the people to send them their responses or to edit their responses after that. There is also an inbuilt feature that you or someone else get informed if someone gives an answer to these forms. And there is like a new feature that is available for channels, for Teams channels, that you can like smart emails to track, but that's something currently is overworked by Microsoft with Copilot. Yeah, and one more thing about forms. Forms is not a tool only for you. You can definitely work together on forms. And that's pretty cool. You can also open forms, if your tenant allows it, to people outside of your tenant. So you can create like a forms collaboratively with external people, with external guests, with other tenants, if they have like a work or school account. But of course, you can also restrict it to your internal company or to internal specified people. Yeah. And in the latest updates, Microsoft also provides you like pre-built stuff for Microsoft Forms to collect responses. What I mean with that is, for example, here you can directly create a QR code. You can get directly an iframe embedding to embed it, for example, in a SharePoint. Or you can also send it directly via email or via Teams channel and give it a quick message. Write that with Copilot if you have a Copilot license, and you have one more time to specify the people who can do that. Forms also get regular updates by the Microsoft product group, and they're actually pretty engaged. What's depending on their thought. I think they have really like good ideas what Forms will be able to do in the upcoming future. So one of the latest updates include a so-called pre-filled URL. That means if you have like a very complex forms, or you have forms that can be filled out by different groups, you can create different pre-filled URLs, so you can specify what they should fill in the blanks. Yeah. So if you have that, or you can also pre-select multiple choice questions that you say, hey, if you have like a large company and you say, look, this one link is for our full-time employees. We have pre-selected what is available for you. If you want to change that, make sure to reach out to us. And we have created another pre-filled URL for our working students that have a little bit limited capabilities in terms of this request, whatever. And it's another pre-filled link that they can directly access, have it pre-filled, but they still can change it and enter their name, for example, but have like all the settings pre-filled out. So that's a quite nice feature. And on the other hand, we recently got a integrated multilingual option. Currently, it's, I would say, a little bit of homework and extra work. So currently you still need to do those translation job on your own, but I would bet that in the next couple of months we actually get a Copilot to translate the stuff for you, because this is definitely long overdue. So I hope we will see that pop up in the message center quite soon. But yeah, I have not official confirmation of that, but I would definitely expect to work on that automatic multilingual settings. But currently the great thing is, if you have like native speakers, you will still be able to actually make your very own translation and make sure the translation is exactly on the point how you want it. So, as I said, I will bring you, because it's a masterclass, not just an overview, I will bring you some tips that I want to share with you. So, one of them is from a recent conversation with a customer. And they actually asked me, hey Daniel, we want to work together with externals on our survey, but we only want them to see the results. So in this case, they had like a large event registration and they wanted to share the results with the caterer and with the hotel, so they know how the numbers go up. And they don't wanted to share the whole forms as editable version with the other guest or with the other external account. So there is also a pretty new feature that there is a pre-built integration from Microsoft Forms and Excel Online, where you can like create a small synchronization in the background between your forms and Excel. So an Excel sheet gets created, and as soon as someone fills out the form, it will be automatically written in the Excel field, in the Excel file. And the great thing is, once you have that, it's mostly in your OneDrive when you have created the forms, or it stays in the Teams if you have created a forms from a Microsoft 365 group. So it is in the SharePoint, the Excel. And then you can just share it as usually, as you know, it's just a file. So you don't share the survey, but you actually share the Excel file where the form survey syncs its answers to it. And I think this was a cool and very useful integration that I think not many people have actually how that works. So now you know, and maybe can use it for your next scenario. Yes, and some additional latest updates besides the syncing was you can also now even further restrict the forms answers in terms of we can, for example, give it an email validation that it needs to be a valid email or a valid URL, or to be at least, 20, 30, 50 characters long, or the answer is not allowed to succeed, to have more than like 100 characters. So we have different restriction options, even more than we had before. And we have like the smart reminders that just, I think 2 days ago, got an update from Microsoft. I saw it in the message center. So with Copilot, you will get some smart reminder options that you don't need to people remind to fill out your forms. And I told you that you can use forms as the start of a process. So in my original like long day course of forms and surveys and inspiration, we will go much deeper into this. But just that you know, you can always create the forms on your own. Then it's stored with your account, and it's your user identity attached to it. You cannot give the ownership to another user for forms, but you can give the ownership from your forms to a Microsoft 365 group. Or on the other way around, you can directly create a new forms out of Microsoft Teams. So if you click on add an app in the Microsoft Teams channel, you can actually search for the Forms app, and then you can create a new forms out of that Teams. And the great thing is, every forms has a link, and why it's so important to create, if you have a digital process of forms in the Microsoft 365 group, is because if you left the company at any time, your forms will get inactive and the processes probably don't work anymore. So it's much safer to attach the forms on a Microsoft 365 group, because then it's independent from your individual user account. And at the end, every forms has this kind of ID. And with this ID, you can actually go to Power Automate, give it in, and then you can access all the different forms elements and start using them in the process. Okay, so that's a very, very nice feature, and you can basically start any type of small process right from the Microsoft Forms. Okay, having a look on the time, we definitely go on with SharePoint lists. So, first of all, SharePoint lists with the forms integration. What is the overall challenge when talking about SharePoint lists? First of all, they are often already there, and they are created in a Teams or in a department SharePoint or in something department related space. And if you know how a SharePoint list looks like and how it works, it is an element in SharePoint. And if you already have a list and you want different people to add elements on that list, everyone for that list needs to have edit rights. So I need to add them to the Microsoft 365 group or access everyone individually on the list. That's not quite nice if you just want to get the answer and not to give them edit rights on the whole SharePoint list to see the other, for example, results. Yeah. So just another example, when you have like maybe a SharePoint list with requests from all your members, you don't want to see all the requests for everyone else. So you probably only want to give them like a possibility to get entries in the list, but not actually to see the list or to not even edit the existing elements of the list. Also, if you adding an element manually, it doesn't really look nice. So the SharePoint lists add element is not really good. And depending on how you have set up the rights, even people might not even see all the results. So what do we do now with the forms integration? How does that come in handy? So first of all, it's an out-of-the-box function of SharePoint list. So if you have previously created a forms and connected the forms to a SharePoint list, you don't need to do that anymore because the integrated feature now offers that one-to-one connection between the list and the Microsoft Forms. All of the existing columns from a list are already integrated and you can access them out of the box. But as we are probably only working with SharePoint, it is limited to internally. Microsoft, I think they are still working on the integration for guests, and they are thinking about enabling it for completely external people. But the problem is the forms that is created in that instance is a part of SharePoint, so you would need to open your SharePoint to externals other than the form service itself. There are quite a few technical challenges behind that. You can, of course, hide or show different fields, and as someone who has edit rights on the list, you can create a forms on that. Yeah. Currently, we have a little bit of restrictions in terms of how fields work. So they say they only support like normal fields mostly, but they also recently brought an update where you have different list element types. One restriction I can tell you, if you're working on your SharePoint list with global managed metadata, for example, to get object or to get specific user elements from Entra ID, like the department or the phone number or the something like that is connected to them, these fields are not available in the integrated forms. But the Power Automate integration with those lists, if it is an internal use case, is even better, because for anyone who has tried out a little bit with Power Automate, you know, there is like a Power Automate trigger that enables you to start an action as soon as a new element is added to a SharePoint list. So you can use that integration, have a SharePoint list, give it a forms, at least internally, and then start a Power Automate. So you have also possibilities to create a small process based on a forms with a list. Yeah. And that's how it looks like. So these are the integrated forms from lists. Yeah, it has like this pre-made design. You can change it a little bit. You are, of course, much more limited. You can, for example, also do no live presentations as you do with form. But it's really for the use case if you need a possibility to give someone from the company the possibility to enter something in a SharePoint list without giving them the actual access to the SharePoint list. Because this forms has its own rights management. You can share it to whoever you want without editing the access for the actual lists it's referring to. So that's quite a nice feature, isn't it? Let me show you how it works. Pretty simple. So that's a SharePoint list. And it's basically a Microsoft list. It's not even in SharePoint. It's in my environment. It's in OneDrive. And as you see, there is this new button. It's called Forms at the very top. You just click on it, and then you have the possibility to create a new form. You get those default layout. You have the possibility to give it a name, to upload a logo if you want. And then on the right side, you see you can show or hide different fields. So Microsoft is working on more and more types of list inputs that you can select, that really everything is possible. Also on the recent update, they enabled branching so that you can only show certain list elements or show certain fields if the selection of another field has been done. Yeah, when you say, for example, do you want to bring your husband with you or your partner with you? And you click no, then you just go on with the next question. If you say yes, you will be shown additional field to enter the name. And if you say no, you won't see the name field. And if yes, you will see the name field. You see, we can do a little bit of tweaking and twerking on the graphics, how it's look like about the notification. And we also have the accept responses possibility there. Yeah. So you can also customize the thank you message. And yeah, that's pretty easy. I think that's a pretty intuitive way of how it works. And you get a little preview actually to see how your final forms looks like. Yeah. What are the recent additions to Microsoft Lists? As you have seen, you can upload a logo. That's a little bit of the newer side. And that is how the branching looks like. So you can select, as you can see, that's also the same in Forms. If you have ever done a branching in Forms, you will be quite intuitively working with the same option in Microsoft Lists. Okay, so we have like the great one, the forms that we have for everything that is internally and maybe something related to department stuff. We have Microsoft Forms for Lists. And now I want to talk about Microsoft Pulse. So what is Pulse now? So first of all, Pulse is like the answer for Microsoft for anyone who said, hey, I want to use forms in a more engaging way. I want to use it in my meeting. I want to use it when I actually need voting. So Microsoft said, yeah, we make forms available in Teams. And now the people were confused, as I said, because they have the same forms on different places with different logos. So they gave it their own name, and Polls was born. Yeah. So currently, Microsoft Polls is available as a Teams app, and you can add it to an existing Teams meeting or to a Teams channel. You can actually add Microsoft Polls app to a meeting in advance and pre-fill and start creating all your different questions or question sets before the meeting has started. So you don't need to improvise while the meeting is running or set everything up. No, you can do it before, and you can just fire up the different surveys and votings while the meeting is running. So that's a really great point in terms of how professional you can create meetings. And I actually love to do this when we have like webinars. Yeah, you know that when you, I will bring the point later. Okay, so yeah. You can not only bring up simple questions, you can bring set of questions. So like, hey, please do a check-in with 5 questions. You can have that and just fire it up. And you can actually save those questions and can bring them back on a later point in another meeting. And the greatest addition of that is that the poll that you fire in the very moment, it comes right in your face. It is before the cameras and before the shown content. So it pops up right before the attendee face. And to be completely honest, the rate of how good it's working and how good the response is on that is incredible. Yeah. And if you say, what kind of different possibilities do we have? That's like the current type of question set. You can have multiple choice questions. You can have quiz questions with have a correct answer on multiple choice. You can have open text questions with a word cloud, rating, thumbs up, thumbs down, and a ranking where you can sort answers on your preferences. One really great thing, or if not the great thing about the polls, is when you add the polls app to the meeting in before, and you have external speakers selected or external presenters selected, you can choose if you want to share the specific poll sets that you create with externals or with the other speakers. Of course, you can do that internally. So if you want to work together to collaborate on those question sets, you can do that. But the really incredible thing, and that piece of technology has worked also like 2 years ago, that you can do the cross-tenant collaboration. Yeah. So you have a little switch on the left of a question set. You can click on that and you will see that you can say, allow co-presenters to edit your poll while it's a draft poll. And that works for external. If you have entered someone as a co-presenter with their other tenant or with their email address that is not in your tenant but in another tenant, they can also access the polls app in Teams and before and edit your polls. And I can tell you that is really, really nice. So let me give you one example. With a pretty large German automotive car manufacturer or car part manufacturer, I did some trainings about OneDrive, about Copilot, about SharePoint, about Teams and Planner. And we did it like everything in 2 languages, 2 times. So we had like, I think 10 or 12 different 10 or 12 different meetings. So the customer asked me, hey, Daniel, can we get a feedback in a meeting? And I said, yeah, we can. And we should do that via poll because from my previous experience, the answer rate and the feedback rate of Microsoft polls are incredibly high. So I remember I did a pilot training on another company where we had like 60 or 65 people in the meeting. And at the end of the session, we ask about feedback for the session and we get 59 responses. So over 90% answer rate. When you're just sending a forms in the chat and say, hey, please evaluate us and give us feedback, you probably get like, I don't know, maybe 40%, maybe 50%, probably even less. But with poll, since it directly pops in the foreground, why not answering it? You want the window to go away and to look at the content again. So you give feedback and you give rating. And that's really my go-to trick. If you want to increase response and engagement on your meetings, on your webinars, use the freaking poll app. It's really, really great. Yes, you're limited in terms of what you can ask, and it's a little bit limited in terms of visualization, but it works with externals, it works with guests, and it's really a great experience. Sometimes it's a little bit buggy on mobile, but on browser and Teams, it's my top tip to get away if you use Teams a lot. So if you have not seen it, that's how it looks. Hope everything is still in English here. Yeah. So we see we have a predefined set of questions, and it's our check-in questions. And you see we have like with a little bit emojis. Yeah. How do you feel? We have like this rating stuff. We have like a word cloud. And imagine just, of course, I was alone in this test, but in the background you have like all the videos and the content, and it pops directly in front of your face of the presentation or over the screen sharing. So you fill it out. Yeah. Probably it's like, I want to show you all the different question types there. It's a little bit much, but I think it's totally valid for a closing feedback. Yeah. And try it out. You will be surprised how many feedback you get because people just fill it out. People hate switching elements. They hate clicking on links and open it in the browser and navigate forward and back. And there it's all in one place. They're focused. You have them on the attention and you get the results directly. I think I've made the point, but I'm so glad that I can share this feature with you that I just want to really make the point here. There's also the integration in Teams channels. I say it's okay. It's good to know if you ever need to make a quick poll. Now we also have lists. We have Loop for this type of thing. So this could be a good alternative for that. But you can also add the polls app while you are creating a Teams post. So you can answer the question. And it looks like that. And at the end, you post like a message. Currently, you're limited to only one question per message. And you will see the results aggregated in the first comment. That is, everything is automatically posted by the Pulse app. Okay, so one more thing about the after webinar feedback and all the stuff. I see that a lot, especially when I'm at Microsoft conferences, when I'm at, I would say like America or US influence conference, we get those feedback stuff a lot. And what I see all the time is this. QR codes. They are everywhere. Sometimes I even feel people using it as a design element. They say, yeah, let's put a QR code on this. We need a QR code. We need a QR code there. Do you see presentation with QR codes all over the place? And sometimes I ask myself, why do we do this? First of all, when you're really working with a large user base and when you're working in a professional company, to put QR codes everywhere, it just lowers the bar and people feel like QR codes are safe. You don't know what's behind that. Who tells you that there is not a Microsoft phishing site after the site where you freely enter your email, your password, you then give them your authenticator, and you are phished, and you've answered everything for them because you thought it was safe. No, QR codes are like any link, and the bad thing is you don't see the link. You just scan it and say, oh, nice, yeah? Second thing, if you start your presentation by, hi, my name is Daniel, I have an opening question for you. How are you doing today? Please go on this forums and enter how you do today. Sometimes I ask myself, did you even thought about that? To be honest, you have like, if you have a webinar or you have like an internal meeting, people are giving you their time and they're giving you the chance about their focus. They're listening to you. They try to understand what you want to say. And what do? You give them a large QR code and say, hey, please scan this. So what do they need to do? They grab their phones. They scan the QR code with their phone. Maybe they even give you the answer. And then what happens is they're losing their focus and say, oh, I have a message from my wife. Let's answer quickly. Hey, what you doing? Oh, Instagram, nice. Oh, someone on TikTok has sent me a message. And you keep doing your webinar and you're making all your good points, but in the second minute of your presentation, you send the people away on their phones, and I can tell you it's incredibly hard to get them back. So please, if you take one thing from today with you, reduce the amount of QR codes you send. In Teams, in StreamYard, on LinkedIn, you can send links into the chat. Okay? First of all. Second, in Teams, you can use PowerPoint Live. With PowerPoint Live, every link is clickable on the presentation. And the good thing on PowerPoint Live, it's even more accessible because you can translate slides. You can have like high focus for people with problems with seeing. So please use less QR codes. QR codes are always good when you want to make a bridge between analog and digital. When you're in the elevator and you want people to engage with you in a Teams, in a community, put a link, put a QR code in there so people can access it with their phone because they don't have the laptop. But if you're in a situation like this, please don't use so much QR codes, okay? And that is for surveys and for everything else, of course. So we have 9 minutes left. Let's finish that up. What do we use for which case right now? First of all, we have like the mothership, we have Microsoft Forms. We can use it for internal cases, we can use it for external cases, we can use it from very simple to very complex use cases. For feedback, for brainstorming, we can also start applications or processes with that. We can do quizzes, and we have those live features. On the other hand, we have the pre-built integration for Microsoft Pulse that gives you all the nice features, but better integrated in meetings. It works perfectly with externals, but of course only in a meeting context. Yeah. If you're out of the meeting context, it can get a little bit confusing. Yeah. You cannot start processes with it, but you can do like small quizzes. But if you have larger quizzes, I would still suggest you to go to Microsoft Forms. And as you have seen in the video, you still have this how cool you have those live features in Microsoft Pulse. And on the other hand, we have List that currently has a limited use case or a more limited use case for everything that is regarded to List or to smaller digital processes. But for that, it's perfectly suited. It's the solution. So if you have like small registrations, internal stuff, or everything that is SharePoint based, List is the easier solution. So know your tools and know what you can do with that. If you want to have more information, there are different links. I've just showed you. Usually you can click them. But if you need any advice, you can also reach out to me via LinkedIn. I think someone has also provided the link in the chat. So Yeah, I hope you learned something today about those different surveys, about the different form applications that we have in Microsoft. And with this being said, I'm happy to have a look and into the chat, into the comments that we get to probably answer a few questions at the end. Thanks for everyone attending, and thanks for staying for today.